Welcome to Fox Hill's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Happy Hump Day. Today is Wednesday, June 8th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
And I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, Congresswoman Karen Bass is headed to a runoff with billionaire Rick Caruso after yesterday's mayoral election in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security is issuing a new terror bulletin, putting online forums on notice if you promote domestic violent extremism. Then a Marine vet recently released from a Russian jail says the WNBA star Brittany Griner may be in a worse position than we thought because she's African American and a lesbian. We have that story.
Plus, Tiffany Haddish is headed to study at Harvard University, and LeBron James is looking out for his hometown, opening up a medical center in Ohio. Yes, we have all that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
There were a lot of primaries around the nation yesterday, but the one that has the most interest for Black people was the race for the Los Angeles mayor. Congresswoman Karen Bass is headed to a runoff with billionaire Rick Caruso. Now, Caruso is a lifelong Republican who recently switched to the Democratic Party. He captured 42% of the vote. Bass, who was a former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, received 37% of the vote. Now, Caruso spent $40 million during the primary compared to Bass, who only spent $3 million. The runoff election is in November. Two hot-button issues during the campaign have been homelessness and crime, both which increased during the pandemic. I think we can all agree that homelessness is a really big issue here in Los Angeles. It's almost like a state of emergency versus a crisis. But with other factors, there's the median price of a home in Los Angeles is above $700,000. Rent prices are soaring. We have the highest gas prices in the nation. If we don't figure out a way to fix all of that homeless crisis or state of emergency, as I like to call it, is going to continue to grow. But I think when you think about Caruso and the campaign he ran on crime, saying he'll clean up the city. One of his plans was to put more officers on the streets. He wanted to hire 1,500 more police officers. Not sure if that's the way to do it. But he also said, which he caught a lot of slack for with his homeless plan, was to arrest people who refuse to move into housing, who refuse to move into state-sheltered sponsored housing. And as I said yesterday, Black and brown people make up 70% of the homeless population. So that wouldn't look good.
No.
So I just think that we need to remember who Karen Bass is, community activist, former chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus. Demi made a great point yesterday when she said that Caruso kind of reminded her of Donald Trump. He definitely gives those vibes. I think that, we need to do our research, not just elect billionaires because they're outspending people who have the actual experience. And that will guide us as we continue to do our own research.
Yes, I think he was about 10% higher than Karen Bass when I looked at the numbers, just a 10% higher increase in popularity in those who voted for him versus Karen Bass. And so back to the comment about Rick Caruso giving us Donald Trump vibes. You said in the story that he switched parties. And so honestly, I don't respect you as much when you switch parties. When you are one party, because it gives off you tried to go to another party just to either be controversial or you thought you had a better chance of winning if you went over to another party. So that's my first thing. Second thing is, I really, even you mentioning homelessness, I don't even think that this race is going to be about what's best for Los Angeles. This is a popularity contest. It's really going to go down to, because there's a story that this is splitting Hollywood down the middle, like Gwyneth Paltrow and Elon Musk and all of these, Kim Kardashian and Snoop Dogg. That's what we're talking about here. Who wants to vote for these people and why? And sadly, the people of Los Angeles are going to lose out because the focus is not about what's really for the people of LA.
But that's why we have to remind them to go vote, because it is a popularity contest. All those names, they have influence, but the common everyday people, they also have influence too, and that is voting, and that's why they need to go ahead and get out and vote.
Agree. And you think about that, you said those names, right? All those names, none of them really live in Los Angeles. They don't live in the area where we have the homeless issues the most, where the gun violence and shooting violence is up. They're not there. They're living in Calabasas and other places like that. So yes, LA, to all our soulmates out there, if you live in this city, it's important in November you go out and vote and do the right thing. We know the turnout was very low this time around because it has happens, but we cannot be shook on this situation. We have to make the right decision for our city. And real quick, when you talk about some of the homeless people possibly being arrested because they refuse to move in somewhere, we're dealing with a lot of homeless people that have mental issues. So sometimes they don't want to leave that area. That's their comfort zone. So how do we approach that as well?
Not to mention, a white male is more palatable than a black woman. Honestly, we just be honest here in America. So, is the world ready for a black female mayor in Los Angeles? That's also another. Yeah. No. Is the world ready? Are we ready? And is the world ready? Is two different things.
Vice president.
Ready to say,
right, but also it's a struggle, and people are not necessarily happy about that. People were not happy when once Barack Obama got out of office, all of a sudden all the races seem to come back. When Kamala Harris gets out of office, the races are going to come back. So I feel like it's it's fun, it's cute to have someone black in here and there, but really at the root, they're not ready to have. It's powerful for us, Romeo, is what I'm saying is like the majority of Americans.
Going against the grain because it's time to make this happen.
Yeah, it is time, but it's just more palatable. A white man in America is more palatable to majority of Americans than a black female.
Yeah, but we're talking about Los Angeles and what's best for Los Angeles, and what's best for Los Angeles is a black woman whose name is Karen Bass. I mean, she has all the qualifications that you could want in someone to lead this country. We're talking about a man versus a man who is a billionaire and he only wants to run. I shouldn't say he only wants to run, but he's using his money and his influence to run and he can still do that. I said this yesterday. He could still use his influence to run. He can clean up the city. He can do all those other things, put his money there. He does not necessarily have to be the mayor to do that.
He doesn't have to have any real values, or he doesn't have to enact any real change. Money and influence is what got him narrowly to beating out so far and where we are right now, Karen Bass. But of course, in November, we're going to have that runoff election and we're going to see how it all pans out. Yeah. As primary election season continues, New York State is on track to pass a voting rights bill that the Senate has failed to move forward on. New York State's legislature just passed its own John Lewis Voting Rights Act. When Governor Kathy Hochul signs the New York voting rights bill, it will be the country's most sustainable set of voting protections in America. The bill creates a pre-clearance program that requires local governments with histories of discrimination to prove new voting laws that would not hurt non-white voters. Now, the law would also add new penalties for voter intimidation or deception.
The Department of Homeland Security is issuing a new terror bulletin. They are warning that the online forums promoting domestic violence extremism are encouraging copycat attacks like the Uvalde school massacre. The DHS Office of Intelligence and Analysts says the online forums are seizing on the event in an attempt to spread disinformation amongst right-wing extremists. Since 2018, 6 of the 9 deadliest mass shootings in this country have been carried out by men 21 years of age or under. It's important that we get in front of this, that we be aware that we are a threat amongst ourselves than outside of our country. That's a problem, right? Yeah. We think about this is our backyard. We live here. Our ancestors built this country, yet we have to live in fear almost every day, from school shootings to police beatings and shootings. It's a lot going on, but a couple things that stand out is how do you stay informed and prepared, and how do you report potential threats? And those are the things that people need to remember. You have to be aware, because I don't see this dying down anytime soon, so it's definitely important they stay on top of this.
Absolutely. Copycats are a big threat.
Right, but just going back to the age range of those who were the shooters being under 21, a very big problem. And that's why I do believe that Joe Biden is doing a good enough job with his language. I'm concerned about, again, going back down to action, going back to actual change being enacted versus what he's saying. When we talk about money and influence, also the NRA as well is another place that takes in money and donors to stay alive. And so until we can, I'm not to say that we should abolish NRA, because there are people that do need to have guns for certain reasons, but we need to get these guns out of those who do not deserve to have these guns under 21 years of age, because you're just not even mentally stable to even, you think it's fun and it sounds cool, whatever sick reason, but it's just, you're 18 years old.
You're wondering what the purpose is for even purchasing the gun at the age of 18, especially when you think about an AR-15 and things of that nature. Where are your parents at? How are they monitoring this situation? Yes, you're 18. You may have moved out on your own, but you're still young. You're a young adult that needs to figure out your life, and purchasing a gun is not necessarily the way to do it.
Not at all.
And senators also benefit from, it's a two-way street. Senators and the donors, it's a two-way street. So they're going to keep going as long as people keep endorsing the NRA.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They said that the membership of the NRA has declined since the Uvalde shooting. And I think that's one way that we can send a message.
Agreed.
Family members of the victims of the Buffalo grocery store massacre and the Uvalde school shooting are demanding action from lawmakers. They testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday. The son of Ruth Whitfield, the 86-year-old woman killed by the gunman as she was shopping, challenged the Senate to do something.
And what are you doing? You're elected to protect us, to protect our way of life. I ask every one of you to imagine the faces of your mothers as you look at mine. My mother's life mattered. My mother's life mattered. And your actions here today will tell us how much it matters to you.
The families hope Congress will move soon on gun control. Something that I found very interesting today, there was a man arrested last night outside of Judge Brett Kavanaugh's house. He was arrested with a knife, pepper spray. He had burglar tools. He said he was upset over the fact that of the Uvalde shooting, the Buffalo shooting, Roe v. Wade, and he just couldn't take it anymore. So he was on his way to Brett Kavanaugh's house. They stopped him about a block before he got there. So this morning, Mitch McConnell came to the floor and he called for House Democrats to pass the Supreme Court security bill. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, House Democrats must pass this bill, and they need to do it today before the sun sets. I agree. They need to protect the justices. But 19 kids died, 2 teachers, 10 elderly black people. And why can't we get the same sort of urgency to pass a bill on gun control that we get for someone who threatened a Supreme Court justice? We're talking about there have been, over 200 and something people who have died from mass shootings. How many people does it take for us to get some sort of common sense gun laws passed versus, one man who was threatened? So now, no, senators, you can't leave till the sun sets. Let's have that same energy when we're trying to pass gun control for these children, for these elderly black people, just for all the people who have died this year and years prior for mass shootings.
Agreed. Absolutely. A threat, not to say that a threat is right, not to say that those people standing outside of a person's house is right, but also no one in your family died from this. You get to walk away, you get to go to your job the next day and live. These people who are begging, that man asking, what are you doing? Real lives were affected. Like, again, going back to Buffalo, it's such a small town that it's a few degrees of separation. So millions of people could be affected by those lives who were lost in Buffalo. And so, like you said, them being so upset about someone standing outside of your house versus someone actually dying and millions of people being affected, way big difference.
Well, that's it. When it comes to your backyard, when they're close to your home, then all of a sudden there's this red alert or this red flag. Well, let's have these red flags for these young kids that's out here trying to purchase these guns. Let's make sure we monitor that. Let's maybe move the age limit up, like they're talking about doing at 21 years of age for AR-15s. Like, there's a happy medium somewhere, but if we don't take any small steps from what we've just encountered over the last month, then we as a country are failing.
Over and over, Romeo. That's a great point. The leader of the Proud Boys is facing sedition charges over his alleged involvement in the January 6th attacks. Now, this is the second time the Justice Department has brought serious charges against Enrique Tarrio. Now, Tarrio was charged last year with conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding and other counts. Both charges are punishable by up to 20 years in prison. Government prosecutors charged leaders of the Oath Keepers with sedition earlier this year.
The Secret Service reportedly rejected a request by former President Trump to visit the U.S. Capitol on the day of the insurrection. The Hill newspaper says a Secret Service spokesperson said the White House proposed to have a motorcade travel to the Capitol after his stop to steal the rally on the Ellipsio, but agency officials told them it was not a feasible plan. In related news, former Vice President Mike Pence's chief of staff reportedly reached out to Pence's Secret Service agent on January 5th. They wanted to raise concerns about the VP's safety. During the riot, the agency took Pence to an underground loading dock and rushed him out of the Capitol.
WNBA star Brittany Griner may be in a worse position in Russian custody because she's African American and lesbian. That's according to Trevor Reed. He's the Marine veteran recently released from a Russian jail in April. Reed says a large portion of the Russian population is racist. He also says the government discriminates against LGBTQ people. Reed was detained in Moscow in 2019 after being convicted of attacking a Russian police officer. He was released as part of a prisoner swap, and he's urging the U.S. to do everything they can to bring Griner back to the United States.
A federal judge is striking down a redrawn congressional map in Louisiana that voting rights activists say will hurt black voters in the state. The activists were joined by Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards in filing a lawsuit to stop the map from being enacted. The Republican drawn map had only one majority black voting district for a state that is 1/3 African American. U.S. District Judge Shelley Dick was appointed by former President Obama. Louisiana has 6 congressional districts. Only one is represented by a black person. That's Troy Carter, a Democrat from New Orleans.
The failure to pass President Biden's Build Back Better plan has been a setback for African Americans. National Urban League leader Mark Morial told The Root that Senator Joe Manchin is to blame for the legislation failing to get through the Senate. Morial says the Act's child tax credit would have narrowed racial differences in child poverty rates like it did from 2020 to 2021. He says if the child tax credit was permanently expanded, child poverty with black children would have fallen by more than 50%.
Hair discrimination is nothing new to African Americans. Since black people were brought to these shores, we've been mistreated for what grows out of our heads. Black hair discriminates. It affects people, though, all around the world. And that's why the U.S. Virgin Islands has enacted their own version of the Crown Act. That's the law that bans discrimination in the workplace based on hairstyles. Now, one of those people who helped bring the Crown Act to the Virgin Islands is Senator Alma Heilinger. The senator serves in the Virgin Islands legislature and is here to tell us how she helped get the Crown Act passed on her island. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So the Virgin Island is 76% black and has it's governed by black people, and it has been for a while. So why was the Crown Act necessary there?
Things people don't recognize, as much as we are the larger part of the population when it comes to race, when it comes to socioeconomic development, a lot of the businesses are owned by non-blacks. So we had to also take into account things that would affect not only in the schools, but also dealing with businesses as well.
You know, you just said a lot of the businesses are not owned by non-blacks. So I know that tourism is the #1 moneymaker on the island. How much pushback did you get from hotels and other tourist industry business leaders to pass this act?
Well, to be honest, the bulk of the pushback actually came from my colleagues. We had some very heated discussions on the Senate floor because when I was sworn in January of 2021, one of my first pieces of legislation that I did submit was the Crown Act. And in doing so and having these conversations, you know, the question became, well, do we really have an issue here? But I had to explain and fight and tell them when a mother and a father is coming here to us and telling us that their child that attends school has to cut their hair because a school is saying they don't feel this style is appropriate. What is appropriate or not appropriate? When it comes to your God-given hair that comes and grows out of your body, you have no control over that. For me, once your hair is groomed, I think that's all should matter. We should not live in a society where we had for so long utilized skin color as a way to discriminate. And when we started to move away from that, or at least that perceived notion of it, we are now attempting to use different things such as hair texture. That is something I did not want to happen here or continue to happen here. After we were successful in getting the Crown Act passed here in the territory, myself and my office was inundated with so many people thanking us, because sometimes you don't realize a problem exists because all you hear that, oh, everybody's black, what's the big deal? But that young man that went to work every day where his boss was harassing him and telling him he needs to cut off his locks, he no longer has to worry about that because that's who he is.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think hair discrimination has affected almost every black woman I know, and I'd love to hear how it has personally affected you in your life.
Well, for me, I can honestly say that I can't say that I allowed any type of discrimination to happen to me. I've never been one to subscribe to bullying of any sort, even as a child and as an adult. It was not something I tolerated. When I speak about hair discrimination, for me, And I would talk about, as a child, I would wonder when people would say, well, okay, your hair is combed a certain way, or somebody would ask a question. That's one thing. But at the end of the day, you have to know your worth.
Yeah.
And if these are the types of laws that I had to bring forward, so people could say, you know what, you are who you are. You should be proud of who you are. And no amount of hair texture should be utilized against you for your own educational advancement, for your work advancement, just to even live in your own society. It is not tolerated.
Mm-hmm. You know, several states here in the U.S. have already enacted their own version of the Crown Act.
Yeah.
It passed the House back in March, but it's still sitting in the Senate. How likely do you think that we'll get enough votes in the Senate to even get the Crown Act passed?
Let me just say, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I think, you know, we were all celebrating when we saw that it moved out of the House, and now we have to deal with the Senate. The best we can do is really try to contact your senators and really tell them how important this piece of legislation is and how it does impact the lives of Afro-Caribbean, Afro-American individuals on a larger scale. I think a lot of times people don't know the impact. When I had to see a little girl, you know, and she's crying because she has in a protective hairstyle and she's being mocked for it by her teachers. You know, those are the types of things that are hurtful because people don't really fully know what at times, especially as African-American women, we go through dealing with our hair. I mean, right now I'm wearing a protective hairstyle, and that is being done because, listen, when you have to get up and fight on behalf of the people of the territory as a senator, I mean, I have to get up and go.
That's right.
And and some days, that's all I'm going to say. Some days it's interesting.
You don't even need to say anymore. Some days, I understand exactly what you're saying. Some days it's just easier, it's quicker, and
Yes.
I live for a protective hairstyle.
Excellent.
Really quick, we are running out of time, but I want to ask you this because Rep. Jim Jordan called the Crown Act a distraction from the issues people care about. But according to a 2019 study from Black Joy Collective, 80% of Black women feel pressure to change their hair or to fit in. They've been discriminated against. Why do you think some people are just so flippant when it comes to this topic?
It is they don't want to accept that racism still exists in some form in America. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's good to say that, hey, we're not stressing anymore about your skin color. You should be happy, forget about it. But you're not accepting the fact that you've chosen another route to be racist against me. And at the end of the day, it's just their way of saying we don't want to hear it. But at the end, we have to tell them our voice has to be heard. You have to know that whether it's our skin, whether it's our hair texture, or whatever you decide in the future, we are not going to tolerate it.
Absolutely. We'll have to leave it there. We are not going to tolerate it. Thank you, Senator Alma Frances Heilinger. Thank you so much for just, you know, what you do and how you've been able to pass this monumental bill there in the Virgin Islands. And we continue to follow your career and salute you.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely.
We love a good protective style, right, Mimi?
Yes, we do.
Stacey Abrams is pushing her opponent to extend the state's gas tax breaks until the end of the year. Abrams says now is the time for Governor Brian Kemp to assure Georgians that they will pay slightly more for gas for the rest of the year. The national average for gas in the United States is $4.91. Governor Kemp, he extended the state's gas tax until July, but people say that's not enough. The average price for a gallon of gas in the state is lower than the national average at $3.76. But Abrams said that that's still too much for people in the state who make just minimum wage.
Juneteenth is now an official holiday in Los Angeles. Mayor Eric Garcetti signed a proclamation making Juneteenth a paid holiday for all LA City employees. Juneteenth marks the end of slavery in America. Mayor Garcetti says the holiday is needed to make sure everyone knows what the day means. Los Angeles has been one of the few places outside of the Southwest United States where the holiday has been celebrated for years.
A Georgetown Law University professor who said President Biden picked, quote, lesser Black woman for the Supreme Court is resigning. Eli Shapiro decided to leave the university after he had been placed on administrative leave for his comment earlier this year. Shapiro was under investigation by Georgetown after his tweet was exposed. The law professor was one of many from the right that attacked the president for saying he would nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court.
A former Mississippi cop who was in prison for killing a black woman he once dated is being ordered to pay her children $2 million. Former Oxford police officer Matthew Kinney was convicted of capital murder for killing 32-year-old Dominique Clayton. Clayton's family members say she was trying to break up with the former cop when he shot her in the back of the head in 2018. Clayton is survived by her 4 underage children. The child's aunt says that the children routinely have nightmares after discovering their dead mother's body in their home.